everyone, and thank you for joining us today on MUSE. I'm your host, Sam Aguilar, and today I'm joined by Robert Griffith, director of the docufilm The Judge, Character, Case, Courage, following Judge Robert Merhige Jr. and his struggle to uphold the law and the U.S. Constitution and deliver equal protection of the law to all of the citizens. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Great to hear. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind this film.
The inspiration really started with Al Calderaro, who should be on here. I think he is, I hope. He's the executive producer. And Al came to me a little over 5 years ago, pushing 6 now, with the idea of making the documentary. We really didn't know each other at that time, but I was very familiar with the judge. I'd worked in television for quite a few years in film departments, news and film departments. So I was familiar with the judge and a lot of the historic cases that came before his bench. So after talking with Al, I thought we could find funding. We had to start a nonprofit. And I thought, it would be a good film to try to make. And so we got it going after about a year. Took about a year of legwork.
Wow. And Al, was funding easy to get during the time of the film?
Well, it wasn't easy. We were helped by the fact that many of the foundations that we were going to for funding were familiar with the judge. And we were fortunate to get some very high profile foundations and people behind the film early on, which helped, but it's not easy, but we were able to do it. Because again, there were many people who still remembered the judge and remembered him fondly and frankly wanted there to be a film made about him. I mean, they wanted us to succeed. And that took a little legwork. Some people initially were resistant to the idea about making a film about the judge. They were concerned that we might tarnish his reputation, but we were able to win them over. And then once they understood what we were doing, they were on board with it. So that helped, but it wasn't easy.
I can imagine. And I think it's safe to say that there are a few iconic judges in our lifetime, a lot of them who left a huge mark and precedence in the law in today's society. When I think of that, I think of RBG, who was huge in my generation. Do you think that Merhige was as widely spoken about as she was?
Well, within his own state, the state of Virginia, I think he was constantly talked about and referenced. But I think when we started to make the documentary, the further out geographically you go, or we would go back in the beginning, not so much he had the name recognition. But I think as the film went along, and of course now with the film being released and being out, and people attaching the cases that came before his bench, and I think he's getting now the exposure that he had in Virginia back in the 70s and 80s. So I think it's going to only continue to grow with the film being released, the importance of what he did.
Definitely. Al, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, when he was active, he did have somewhat of a national profile. There were national media covered, for example, the school busing cases. But then, over time that kind of faded because he died in 2005 and also had been off the bench at that point for almost 10 years. So as people find out about what happened, as younger generations find out about what the judge did, his profile is being elevated. And we kind of made this point to some of the people that originally were reluctant and concerned about the judge's legacy. And our point was that the young folks don't really know who he is. So if we make this film and we make it the way we want to, the judge will have a legacy. And the example I used was that all these youngsters know who Jimmy Stewart is. But Jimmy Stewart's been dead for a long time, but every Christmas they roll out It's a Wonderful Life. And so everybody knows who Jimmy Stewart is. So we're hoping through this film that people get to know who the judge was and get to know what he stood for, because at this point in time, at the time of our nation's history, that's a lesson that we all need to be retaught, how important the law is, and we're a nation of laws, not men, and how important the Constitution is, how important the court system is, and how the independence of the judiciary is so important. And that's what the judge stood for. So we're hoping all that stuff gets sort of rediscovered.
Definitely. I think it was a very timely film. I know that I learned a lot about it while watching it. Do you think that because of the times, it was important for you guys to make this film happen now?
Yeah, I think it became more important. The more we worked on it, the more important it became, because of just the events that were occurring. It became more and more timely as we were working on the film. And so, I mean, that's one of the things that Bob and I were constantly talking about.
Yeah, that's for sure, because we all know that there was a 4-year period where the courts were being challenged constantly. There was a need for a lot of need for Judge Merhige to still be around. So by having a film about him, he is in effect, for sure, still around. But I think that as time went on for us, like Al just said, it became apparent that it was becoming more and more a timely film. And I think that will continue to grow.
Did that skew any of the plans? Did you guys have to kind of alter as you went because of the situations that were going on around the world?
I want to address that from an editorial standpoint. The being in the edit room with this material for quite a few years, this is from my perspective, holding to the story and not being influenced by all the endless upheaval this country was going through. I think almost practicing what the judge did about the rule of law in the edit room, because we can all be influenced. You got to be careful. Stay on the story, stay on point, and you will come out on the other side with a good piece. But if you let too much outside interference get in the room, I think it could be dangerous to telling the story accurately, if that made sense.
Yeah, yes.
I think what we all we really had to do was tell the judge's story, and the judge's story fit into what was happening. And so sticking, as Bob is saying, sticking to the judge's story,
yeah,
was what we had to do, because that was working because of what the judge stood for. So it was basically, not letting the events distract us from the story we were telling, which is about the judge.
Definitely. I will say I really do love how you include like real live interview clips of him speaking for himself, essentially, throughout the film. What inspired that?
Well, there were people that just offered material they had in their possession on the archival side. And then we were definitely scouring. We were looking around, spent a lot of time at the University of Richmond. There's a library there that has his name over the door. And they were quite generous in letting us just come in and go through all the material they had. But a lot of that archival video was just being offered by people that had it in their possession. Of course, some of it came from the court. Again, I think that material would have just sat there, and eventually, who knows, it may have gotten lost, in time. But those were gold nuggets. They really were. They were great to have, to be able to present a question and have the judge answer it in his own voice. Quite powerful. And so, yeah, that I thought that really added a lot to the process.
Yeah,
I agree.
The judge is a very compelling figure. So it was great that we were able to find that film and get it in there, because having him on screen with the stories that were being told about him made again indicated what a compelling figure he would have been if he was still alive. So
yeah, Al and I had a fundraiser event someone put on for us early on, and someone came up to me at the fundraiser, and of course we weren't that far into the process of making the film, and she made the comment, well, I like what you're trying to do here. We had shown a small clip teaser, as we were calling it, and she said, the only thing I see wrong is that you don't have the judge in the film. You need to have the judge. And, I kind of had to really measure my words there, because the judge had been passed for a long time. And what I said to her was, we were working on archival material, which we would have eventually, and there would be a lot of that in the film. And of course, later on, all that happened. But there's I think a lot of people think a documentary, you just sort of go out and start piecing things together. And as you know, I'm sure it's not like that at all. So it takes time to acquire those things, and one thing leads to another.
Definitely. No, I really love that, because I think, as you both are saying, it really helped give more insight on him. It really helped the audience get to know who he was, especially like I didn't really grow up with him. So to see that side was very interesting to me, and it really helps really put his story into perspective. That being said, what do you hope people take from this film? Like, if there was one thing that you hope would come across, what would that be?
You want to take that first, Al? I'll throw something on the backside. Yeah.
Well, what I think is that just, how the system works and how important, people doing their job and being dedicated to the law. And what I'd like to have come out of this is that, democracy is a participatory activity. You have to be involved. You have to, for one thing, you have to vote, but you need to be in touch with your congressperson or your senator. If you have something you want to say, you should say it. And that we all need to understand what's in the Constitution. We all need to understand what the courts are doing, what's happening, because it affects all our lives. These decisions are being made that affect our lives. So you have to know what's going on. You have to know how it works, and you have to be involved. And that's what I hope. But through people wanting to find out more about the judge, they will start finding out more about the courts. They will start finding out more about the cases. They will find out more about the issues, and hopefully start reading the Constitution. So that's what I hope.
Yeah. I would ditto that. I think, it's challenging times that we live in. And I think the story, there's so many things that are happening in this country on a daily basis. And I think looking at the film from a standpoint of how it addresses the court systems and judges and our laws and the Constitution, I think there's a great opportunity for this film, and hopefully there'll be more films made like this for the younger generations coming along, to put a spotlight on, I think, some issues that have been sort of dormant, not addressed, been just there, quiet. So I think it's, again, a very timely piece, and I just hope it keeps getting a good bit of an audience, and it stays out there for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's never easy to approach something like this. I think the Constitution itself is a huge topic, and I know you could talk about it forever and ever and ever. There's so much to unravel. What was the main focus that you wanted to touch on with that?
Well, as we were getting the material, because we had over 30, Al might have the exact number, I think it's 33 or somewhere in that range, people that we interviewed. That was on camera. So a lot of material. And again, you're going to people trying to get a sense of this man through their eyes, through their memory. and things start to gel, but it takes a while for certain stories to sort of all merge together. And I think, having all that material and spending a lot of time in the edit room with it, it's like weaving. You just, you keep adding, subtracting, and eventually you get these blocks, these sections. And it just it's organic. I like to call it an organic process, but really telling the story of the judge. And I think that just takes time to unfold. You don't have a script, you have an outline. You have an idea, but that idea is a long ways from being fully developed. That comes along as you're interviewing, as you're doing archival work. And if you're fair to the film, if you're honest with the film, you put it all in there as much as you can, so you get a balance of the individual. And I hope we accomplished that. I think we did.
Yeah, we actually interviewed 36 people.
Thank you. Yeah.
And there's a number of them who didn't make it into the film, and there are many other cases that we could have focused on, but it was just so much material that we kind of looked at the cases that still resonated today. Obviously, the busing desegregation. I mean, it's an issue we're still dealing with. The environmental issues that we were dealing with in the Keepone case, and then the health products that also, but women's rights in the Dalcon Shield issue. So it was kind of like, out of like all the high profile cases that the judge was involved in, we had to just sort of pick what is still resonating and what also exemplified the judge's courtroom technique, the way he handled cases, his kind of creative solutions to very difficult problems. And so it was just a matter of, and Bob and our editor Scott really did a great job taking all this material. I mean, 36 interviews, I don't know how many hours of film that was. I mean, it's more than 36. So
we averaged, Al, I think we averaged over, each interview represented well over an hour. I mean, because some of them went like 2 and 3 discs. So yeah, a lot of material. Yeah.
Wow. No, I can only imagine. And then you spoke to a lot of people, and there was a lot of people telling their story and their perspective on the judge. So I think this is a very, like I said before, a very timely film, a very informational film, but also a very compelling story. So I really enjoyed it. And was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Al?
Well, I think, we would like this film to get the largest possible audience because it is a compelling story. It is a story that people, in my opinion, need to hear. And as I think Senator Warner says in the film, we could certainly use a lot more people like the judge today on the bench. But I think in the recent months, what was shown is that there are people like the judge still on the bench. And this is one of the things we learned when we were interviewing people, how seriously the judges and the lawyers take the law. They really feel the responsibility to uphold the law and uphold the Constitution. I mean, especially the judges, very dedicated people. And I think that showed, especially in the last 3 or 4 months. So that's, as I said, we'd like people to get interested in the government, interested in the Constitution, and interested in what a great gift our system is, our democracy is, and how rare it is in the history of humankind. And so we need to pay attention. As Benjamin Franklin said, we've given you a republic if you can keep it. And so it's up to us to keep it. And it's up to every person to participate. So.
Yeah. Well, I have one son who happens to be a lawyer, and I gave him a private screening along with his wife who happens to be a lawyer. And of course, you know, they're going to be kind to the dad, but I drilled on him a little bit and said, be honest here. How does this hit you? Because going through law school, they look at films and they critique them and what have you. And I believe them. They said they really, really learned a lot and they enjoyed it. So to that point, I would like to see, I hope we get a good share of a young audience, because I think it is important that these things be seen, understood, and that there are judges out there like Judge Merhige still today. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, I am Sam Aguilar. I'm here with Robert Griffith and Al Calderaro. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice meeting.
Great doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.